All right. So Suzanne is a veterinarian, but she also has a PhD in pathology and pathobiology and is really into all kinds of interesting stuff. It's not the standard veterinary work. She's very active in the local community and in social justice issues. And she's a member of, count it, like 50 bazillion Rotary clubs. Her primary Rotary club is the Rotary Club of Carey Page. And then she's also an affiliate member of the Social Justice E-Club, Environmental Sustainability, and the All Nations Club. And today she's going to share with us some information about mental health issues. Take it away, Suzanne.
Thank you so much. I see you, Marie. Can you see me? I know it's sometimes better to see the person who's speaking, but I don't know how to do that from my end. So I'll just speak to you. I wanted to tell you a little bit about my story because the subject today, I just wanted people in this time of COVID to have a little more access to help for people with mental illness or substance abuse or just the effects of the pandemic. And so I thought I would bring to you some resources that might be helpful. My father was an alcoholic, but in his later years, he became sober. And that was about when he was in his 60s and he lived to be 92. My mother became ill and she was sort of the person who was in charge of everything within 100 miles and held our whole family together. And when she did, he was sober, but he was given a different diagnosis of bipolar disorder because he became quite manic, and we thought he had a brain tumor or stroke or something because he was usually a very passive sort of person, more toward tamped down, but he just was really wild. He would visit people at 4 a.m. and just do really inappropriate things. And we thought, my Lord, what's going on? So we went through a diagnosis and our family really intervened, just treading water because we didn't know what to do exactly. And we were really fortunate because he got really good care from the head of psychiatry at Emory University in Atlanta. We had a meeting with him and he immediately diagnosed what was going on, which was amazing. Now, looking back with my experience these days, one of the hardest things is to get a good diagnosis. So long story short, my father was treated with an old-fashioned remedy, which was lithium. The downside is it can have kidney effects, so you have to have a blood test, but that was a small price to pay each month to get that blood work done because he regained his life. He was gregarious, engaged, productive. He worked until he was 88, and he was a new, happy man, a very productive life. So I also have 3 brothers, and about 5 years ago, my youngest brother, Richard, with whom we share a close friendship and relationship as well as being brother and sister, he was really depressed, and he also received a diagnosis of bipolar, and he struggles with it. Lithium has not worked for him, and finding medications, it's been quite a journey. So my brother and his family, his wife and daughter, were moving to Raleigh about 3 years ago. And it happened right at the time that my church, I go to Edenton Street United Methodist Church in downtown Raleigh, had a program we call Church in the City, where we look at current issues and talk about them because we want to serve our parish downtown. And one of those, and all faith communities and communities struggle with, how do you minister to families and people who are struggling with mental illness? Either their loved one is affected or friends or, family afar. And so the topic was, how do you minister to mental illness? And they had a panel of 3 people. One was a representative of NAMI, which is National Alliance on Mental Illness. I had a little bit incorrect. I think it said OB on the next slide, but don't worry, don't move it yet. And it was a person who had actually struggled with mental illness. It was a mother who had postpartum depression, and her story was so moving because she said her family and having health insurance really helped her. And the third was therapist, a social worker with further training in psychology to be, I forgot what the higher level is, but she was a therapist essentially. And it was quite moving. I had not heard about NAMI before this meeting. So after that meeting, I made a phone call about trying to find some resources to help my brothers who moved to town. So that's where I learned about NAMI. Would you change to the next slide? The reason that this is a very interesting article, and you can take a picture of this if you wish, and then look up this article later, because this is reflective of our very local area and all the issues we have. First of all, many of you may realize that in the South, I'm doing a stereotype here, and those of you who are not native born Southerners, just humor me. But we sort of celebrate in our literature and everything our people with quirks. So we would have someone who was mentally ill or had some intellectual disability or some other quirky thing. We'd have them on our front porch. We would include them. We'd love them for the most part. Of course, there's like To Kill a Mockingbird, where Scout meets the person next door that was up in the attic. But in the South, we try to work around it, but there is a huge stigma about mental illness. And that was my reference about bringing a casserole, because if someone is ill with cancer or COVID or a broken leg or a new baby, the whole community and family and friends surround them with, you know, help with chores or bring groceries or bring food or whatever just needs to be done, walking the dog or whatever. But you don't know quite what to say if someone is dealing with an illness like mental illness, that you don't know exactly what's going on. People's behavior is inappropriate sometimes, and you're frightened sometimes, or it's really invisible to the community, and you don't know what to say or what to do, or even if you, it makes a person nervous if you call that is dealing with this. Fast forward a little bit to the pandemic. So what's happened here, first of all, before that, recovery and addiction are big issues. We had an opioid and narcotic and meth, amphetamine, and heroin epidemic before COVID hit. And there was a lot more attention paid, to the point that our Attorney General in North Carolina headed up a whole coalition of attorneys general and governors to work on this problem. It no longer was just a people of color issue with, I'm sorry about the birds, about heroin or crack cocaine, crack, or those things that affected mainly the people of color. It didn't matter if you were poor or wealthy. It was white people, wealthy people, everybody became involved. So we have this pandemic of addiction coupled with, you may have noticed that they left the ABC store open for the pandemic. It was one of the few things that was considered essential, because they didn't want people not to be able to get alcohol if they're alcoholics. So you've got substance abuse, mental health issues. A lot of people in the 80s were turned out of like Dorothea Dix Hospital and sent to community care. So there was no place for people to go. There's quite a big shortage of not only providers, but also psychologists, psychiatrists, nurses, hospital facilities for inpatient, how to handle people in crisis. Our infrastructure has not caught up, and it's a dire need that was there before the pandemic. So the pandemic hits. You have people who have to move back in with family or friends because they are losing their apartments or losing their place to live. You have people with mental health issues that may be talking to themselves on the street or being aggressive that have become homeless, and they can't stay in a homeless shelter. And it's a infection hotbed to be in some of these congregated communities. So a lot are put in prison because they commit criminal acts because of mental illness or because they're not thinking straight. And so you have children not in school anymore because they are sent home for remote learning. There's isolation. And even those, if we're with our beloved spouse or our children, you know, being with them 24 hours a day for 15 months, you know, you've loved them as much as you possibly can enjoy. So all of these couple really made it a pressure cooker for people. I go to a therapist just to keep me in balance. And I just asked her, I said, what about the young people? She said, I have had more children who are early teens thinking about suicide. They miss their friends. They miss being together. Bullying is a huge issue. Gun violence is a worry in schools. And she said these young people are just really struggling. They're back home with their parents. The parents are trying to work from home. If they still have a job, they may have lost their job. You know, people are rejiggering how they're living with this. And on top of that, there's illness from COVID and cancer and other things. There's death and huge loss where you can't have closure very easily because the pandemic prevents us gathering. So those were the things that I just wanted to bring up to you. And this article is really excellent for summarizing some of the things. Another big issue is there's quite a disparity in North Carolina between the rural and the urban areas. But let me say, even our urban areas like Durham and UNC both have excellent facilities, and we have community hospitals that feed into that here. And we have other providers here in our urban area. They are overburdened. First, because of COVID, and some people are winding up with mental illness at the emergency room, and they're just being boarded for days until they can find a place for them to go. The other thing is, if a family's in crisis and they call for help with the police, this person with mental illness is violent or threatening, they will come, but often that person will wind up in jail or, you know, some other place that's not ideal. So I just wanted to bring that up. Could we have the next slide, Marie? Thank you so much for doing this. Please take a picture of this because we're so fortunate to have really good services with NAMI, both in Wake County and the state. As a result of my call to NAMI Wake County, I took a class it's called Family to Family, and it's for family members who are supporting people struggling with mental illness. So many times it's not like, you know, if somebody has asthma or broken arm, you don't know where to turn and where the resources are. And if you go to this site, namiwake.org, there's all sorts of information listed that you can get help. There's also a hotline that you can call it, a helpline that you can call at any time that people will get back to you right away. we have, fortunately, a really excellent North Carolina mental health director, Victor Armstrong, who speaks every Sunday on Facebook and Twitter about suicide. He is stellar. His office is in Charlotte, but they have a branch here, and they are really, really, really helpful. That division does mental illness, disabilities, and substance abuse, which is sort of all intertwined there. So it's quite helpful. The state office for NAMI is here in Raleigh. And every Thursday night, they offer an excellent education program. You can go to the website here and register for that, and they'll send you a reminder each week and tell you what the topic is. It also is great because they record all these. So if you have a particular topic, for example, involuntary commitment, you could look up that talk and get a great deal of information there. I wanted to put a special plug in for education things available. Family to Family is only one class. And right now I went on to, after I took the class, I became a trainer for teaching Family to Family. And my friend Andrea Chase and I are doing a class right now. It started last Sunday and it's 8 weeks. The family members come and we teach them about all the resources and all the aspects of what the brain disorders are, what treatments are currently available. It is a very valuable course. On Tuesday, well, first of all, on Monday nights, all of these are virtual at this point. On Monday nights, there's a support group that you can call into, register on this site on NAMI Wake Education and Events. It's just for stress and anxiety, not particularly mental illness. There are people there who are struggling with mental illness. There are family members. There are people who just feel so isolated and nervous in this time of not knowing exactly what to do. And we're so polarized politically. It's just a shame because it adds to the stress and anxiety when you want to see your family and you're not sure who's vaccinated, all that stuff. Monday nights, it's for stress and anxiety. Tuesday night is for family members, not the person struggling, but for family members who support people who are struggling. And I have been volunteering to do that for about 3 months. We have seen it go from about 12 people. For the last month, we've had 35 people come. So we have 4 breakout groups. People are struggling. Please come if it's a safe place. It's not recorded. It's confidential. Nothing is ever said outside. But people can get information they need to help their loved ones and also take care of themselves, because you can't really support someone unless you get support for yourself. And it's hard to set boundaries when you're trying to help someone get back on their feet. On Wednesday night, there's Connections, which is for people who are suffering from mental illness. This is on this website as well. And let's move to the next slide, because this is the main reason I told Marie that I would like to speak to you. Basics on Demand is a fantastic self-driven online program for parents with children 22 years or younger who are suffering mental health symptoms. And Wake County NAMI has set up a discussion group that is virtual as well. You take the class on your own, and after you've taken the class or while you're taking the class, you can sign up and go to this education and discussion group. These are parents in the front lines where they have a minor child or one that's still on their health insurance to 26. Many of these folks are just lost because you've got the teenage when they become an alien, being at home, having mental illness issues, and you don't know where to turn, and you're responsible for your minor child's care. And I mean, it's heartbreaking to see how difficult it is for some of these parents. So I just wanted to be sure, please spread this information to your groups, because all you have to do is take the class and go. For any of these things, you can apply at any time. And the support groups are open every week. You can jump in and jump out as you need to, or as you have time, as well as the education on Thursday nights. There's also all sorts of resources on those, on that website. I think there's one more slide that's just every Tuesday, there's Tuesday News Day, and they have all sorts of flyers and information about things coming up. For example, Thursday with NAMI is that education thing. This is NAMI NC. So if you want to just go and sign up for this newsletter, it has a different topic, and see, it tells you like, this is feeling okay in the workplace. They had a panel discussion about it a couple of weeks ago. And then here's a flyer for that course that I mentioned about NAMI Basics on Demand. The result of that city, our church in the city that we had at my church, we are going to be sponsors when classes are back in person, to have classes meet at our church. And we're going to try to do more than one training, like we'll have the support groups, and maybe we'll have peer-to-peer support group and family to family, but we also will teach NAMI Basics in person for families and and family to family, but we can't meet in person yet. So the advantage of that is anybody can attend the virtual ones. It's just being able to access the information to sign up. And I have no problem. Marie, if you don't mind, would you put my email in the chat so that people, if you need to just reach out, if you don't have, a way to find information or have trouble, you can just send me an email or call me, and I'll be happy to talk with you. And please spread the word about this, because there's such a huge need. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. If you do have people that are suffering, even friends who feel isolation and don't have overt mental illness, check on your strong friends and check on your friends that are weak and hate the isolation so much. Just make a phone call. It means so much if you just reach out to them, because people are really isolated. So happy to answer any questions. I'm just an amateur. I'm not a professional. I'm just a volunteer, but I really feel passionate because there's such a huge need.
Something I hadn't thought about until I was listening to you, Suzanne. With the end of the eviction moratorium, we're going to have thousands, tens of thousands of people out on the street. I would imagine that's going to increase their mental health challenges. And I'm wondering, I don't think society is set up to deal with that. And I'm wondering, is there a way to approach that, to stick a finger in the dike,
There's a lot of groups working on that. I work with affordable housing with the League of Women Voters, and it is terrifying because, as you know, you guys live in Knightdale, but Raleigh City Council is having a survey now about how to spend the rescue money that has been just languishing there. But there's going to be a lot of people that have not had a salary, who have not paid rent or utilities. It's coming due. The piper is going to have to be paid. And you sort of also feel for those small landlords. One issue is North Carolina was one that chose not to expand Medicaid.
Right.
And so there's a huge gap of people who make too much money to qualify for Medicaid, but yet they can't afford health insurance. So the biggest thing that helps people with mental health, the one blessing of the pandemic was they moved to telemedicine for people to be able to talk to their therapist. Because think about this, they may have been seeing their therapist every week. They may have had a day program where they could go or be or group home. A lot of that just ended, you know, and a lot of people who had no shelter to stay were put in hotels to try to keep COVID from spreading. That telemedicine is still the thing, but it's so hard to find a therapist. That's a big, or a psychiatrist for the medications, because, you know, a licensed social worker who's our psychologist can't do the medicine part. So most people don't realize, because if you qualify for Medicaid, if you're just plain poor, one person, if you don't have children, you don't get Medicaid unless you have a disability. So you have to apply for disability, and that is very difficult to get. Mental illness, if it's severe, should qualify for disability, but usually you have to get an attorney or somebody to help you navigate, because it'll take 3 or 4 years to get that disability thing. But people do not realize, I think there's 600,000 in North Carolina that need medical insurance but fall in that gap. I mean, it's huge. And that would be a big help, especially there's such a disparity between rural and urban areas. The community hospitals were closed in the rural areas trying to consolidate. There are no care providers for behavioral health out in rural areas. It's a big problem, David.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's frightening. And this second wave of COVID Delta variant is, we didn't need that. So please join me in praying that we don't have a hurricane on top of it, because if we have that, it just is so devastating if there's a lot of damage.
Yeah, we're just coming into the peak of the season. Traditionally is about this time.
Yeah, it used to be November 1st, but now it's November 30th, and it's just scary.
So Suzanne, thank you. I think you can see your certificate of appreciation.
Oh, thank you.
We thank you for your time and your expertise and your volunteering, and yet one more thing, and I will send you the certificate so you can print it out and put it as the background of your virtual.
That would be great. Thank you.
And we thank you very much for that.
I really enjoyed it, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we're
Thank you.
glad that you are here.